Alrighty then, let's do it. Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video of the That Chapter podcast...
No, wrong one.
Oh, fuck it. Thank you. In this little video of the That Chapter podcast, my brain is fried from... I didn't actually have a clue what you were even pointing out there.
I thought you were doing a joke.
I
thought you were doing a bit.
No, that's just my brain is fried from saying, and in this all something, That Chapter. In this whole episode of the podcast, that's what, yes, we're doing the podcast today, not recording a video. All right. Yeah. I'm here. You've heard his dulcet tones correcting me already. I'm joined by Dirty Keith.
Heyo.
Sitting across from me, he's wearing his favorite band in the whole wide world. I'm sure he sleeps in this t-shirt as well. It's Billy Talent. Billy Talent 2.
God, man, you, like, every single time we do a podcast, you keep on saying what I'm wearing. And every time I go out, and someone's like, are you wearing that t-shirt again? It's like, no, yeah, Mike just keeps saying I keep wearing these t-shirts.
You have, like, 3 t-shirts that you wear. That's it.
Well,
these same t-shirts.
These are my favorite t-shirts, and I wear them.
Okay.
This
is a special occasion.
These are special occasion t-shirts.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't get out of the house. I work from home.
Okay.
So when I leave the house, that's a special occasion.
Okay. Well, folks, you're getting the top quality, top drawer Keith culture and clothing on the podcast. Hope you enjoy it on a non-visual medium. But you know what? Just know that Keith is wearing his Sunday best, which is almost always a black t-shirt with either Billy Talent, Misfits, Nike, or something.
It's some sort of graphic tee.
Yeah, some sort of graphic tee. But how you doing?
Good, man. Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited. We got this is a part 1 of a 2-parter. It's a heavy one. It's a dark one. Okay. Housekeeping as always. Everybody knows Malibu Mike, Hollywood O'Hara. I got my Mike's patented movie review hour that I do every single episode.
Excellent. Okay, yeah.
So I got some new movies.
Excellent.
I've been a busy bee. Got some good ones.
Hooks.
That's number 1 rule of showbiz. Always leave them wanting more. You know, I know people are chomping at the bit to get some of Mike's movie reviews. So I have a few here. I'll only go through 2. I'll save the next 2 for the next podcast.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So in this one, Mike's movie reviewing is 2 movies. I'll go with one. They're both new.
Okay.
So the first one is The Substance.
Oh yeah, I've seen it with Demi Moore.
I watched that with Demi Moore. She just won a Golden Globe. Maybe she'll win the Oscar for it. I think usually if you win a Golden Globe, you'll win the Oscar too. Or a lot of times you do.
Yeah.
But so I watched The Substance.
Okay.
Do you know what the plot is? I won't spoil it, but because I know a lot of people listening probably haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I haven't seen it, so I can't imagine I'll spoil the plot. But I figure it's about a woman who's probably past her prime, wants to try and get back some of it, and she goes through an agency to make her younger or something.
That's exactly it.
Okay,
yeah, Demi Moore is like, she made the very stupid move for a woman in Hollywood to get past the age of 40. And she's now useless to everybody, especially a guy, Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the kind of villain of the movie. I thought he was really good in it because he's a real disgusting piece of shit in the movie. But yeah, basically she gets this substance where a younger version of herself kind of, it's very gruesome, kind of appears out of her, like rips itself out of her, like it rips open her back and comes out. And then she has to spend 7 days in her regular body, her older body, and then she has to switch. She kind of does this like blood transfusion thing.
Okay, yeah.
So like when she's in the young body, her older body is there, but sort of comatose, and she can go around and do her things, and now she's like young and hot and really, really successful. Then after 7 days, she has to switch back into her old body.
Okay.
During this kind of blood transfusion thing. But as you can imagine, she wants to stay in the young body more and more. And things start to go wrong. It's very body horror. I didn't actually like that much.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I thought it started off pretty good, and it's one of those movies it's about a lot of things. It's about women in Hollywood and plastic surgery and aging and what does it mean? And I just was like, it's actually kind of fucking boring, to be honest with you. It felt like to me it would be good if they cut about 40 minutes off of it.
Yeah.
Like the last third of the movie, I was like literally tapping my foot, being like, all right, can we, like, I'm bored.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. And it's like still going on.
Right.
It kind of felt like, an episode of Black Mirror.
I was just about to say, wasn't there? It sounds a lot like. Have you ever seen? It was like, do you know Del Toro, the director?
Guillermo del Toro?
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro, and he did like Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix. I think there was like an episode of that was very similar to that. I think so.
I don't know.
Definitely seen something really similar.
Well, anyway, I thought it was like I enjoyed it. I don't know why everybody's freaking blowing their load over it. I didn't think it's like that good. It was just kind of like meh. The performances were very good. Like Demi Moore deserved like the award. I thought she was great in it, and the actress who plays the younger version, I'm not sure what her name was, but she was very good too. The acting in it was very good.
Yeah.
Just didn't think it was like everybody's kind of maybe it's just it was overhyped for me, and then when I watched it, I was like, that's it.
Not your cup of tea.
Yeah. So maybe other people will enjoy it. Hey, folks, you know what? Before you start ringing in, into our daily call sessions, first time, long time, this is just one man's opinion. So if you disagree with that, that's absolutely fine. But you're wrong. But all right, so that's Mike's movie review for The Substance.
It was an episode within Cabinet of Curiosities.
What episode?
It was.
Oh yeah, that's a really good episode. That was actually better.
Okay, yes.
So
same
just
idea.
Watch that. Yeah, same idea. But I can't remember. If you've watched Cabinet of Curiosities, you'll know the one. Yeah. It's the woman who gets obsessed with the TV teller and she drinks the food. Anyway, blah blah. Yeah. So that's one movie. Do I give my movie reviews out of 10 or out of 5? I can't remember. Okay, well let's just say I would give it probably like
thumbs up.
I give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Thumbs up. 2.5 thumbs up.
No, that's the middle, so it's like a thumb in the middle.
Okay.
I haven't decided. I would probably would have given it a 3 if it was shorter.
Okay, right.
Maybe even 3.5.
Okay.
Just felt like, hey, listen, if you got nothing better to do, worth a watch. I got it on like Apple TV, whatever. Okay, so the other movie though I got to watch. Holy moly! I think it might be one of my favorite movies. I don't know if it came out in 2024, but maybe it came out in late 2023. But I'm going to count it as a 2024 movie. And I think it might be my favorite, or one of my favorite movies from last year. It's called Strange Darling.
Okay, right.
It is. Don't look it up.
Okay, I just wanted to see the cover of the.
It's a movie that you really would want to go in just totally blind.
Okay, right.
Okay, well, I'll give you just the basic premise of the movie. So it starts off just like this serial killer. It's all set in like Oregon, like in the Pacific Northwest, and the movie opens with a serial killer chasing this woman. Like they're in 2 cars. He's chasing her as they're both driving down the road, and that's all you really need to know.
Okay.
The movie is divided into chapters, so there's chapter 1, blah, 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 but it's not done chronologically.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So it begins with chapter 3, and then it goes to chapter 1, and then chapter 5. But the premise of the movie, it's a serial killer hunting this woman, but it's full of twists and turns, and it's just, I thought it was like a really original, like really, really good, really original. The acting in it I thought was great. There's no actors I really recognized. The male lead, is that actor Kyle Gallner, I think his name is. He's the male lead from Smile.
Oh, I think I know him,
Yeah.
I really like when I see a good film with actors that I don't know. Because I sometimes feel if I go to see like a horror movie or something and there's a really, really well-known established actor, it takes me a little bit to kind of disassociate that actor what I know him from. So when I kind of get in and I don't know anything about them, it's just, okay, these are those people and that's their life.
Yeah.
I'm just sucked in from the start.
Preconceptions or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought this movie was brilliant. Really well, really original, really unique. Like totally was like blowing my mind, like the twists and turns the movie was taking. It's really beautifully shot. Yeah, so Strange Darling, folks, go find it. I rented it on Apple Movies. It was like just a couple of euros. If you can find it, definitely do. But go in as, I would just say that's the premise. Don't know any more about it. I just thought it was brilliant. It was like one of those movies where I watched it. I was like, how it's not like more well known. This movie is fantastic. It's such a good thriller. So I would say that was probably like out of last year. I'm counting it as a 2024 movie. I think it might have come out 2023. But if my horrors, it would be like Long Legs, Strange Darling, maybe even above Long Legs. I probably put it on a pretty even thing to Long Legs, and then Nosferatu. Okay,
right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
We have me sold.
So that's Mike's movie reviews. The Substance, I would give it 2.5 out of 5. Strange Darling, I would give it 5 out of 5.
Okay,
I thought it was so good. So good. So please check the second one out. And now let's get into today's episode.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right. Today, folks, we are talking about Carl Panzram, a very infamous, sort of infamous serial killer. Like today we're going to take a look into the life of one of the world's most overlooked, I think is the best way, serial killer. And I say serial killer, I could quite as easily use the term mass murderer or even spree killer, and he went on a lot of sprees over the course of his life. Some of his actions, as well as his attitude towards his deeds, were so heinous and so utterly fucked up that it's quite amazing he's not much more infamous than he is. It also helps that he actually authored a tell-all style book in which he detailed almost his entire life. It's a fascinating, if at times nauseating, case study of just how much evil a human being, broken by their life circumstances, can be driven to. Unlike many similar killers who gave accounts of their lives, Carl seems to have been far more honest about both what he did and what drove him, thanks to nearly all of his claims being supported by official record or other non-anecdotal evidence. Trigger warning as well, folks, for basically every kind of sick, shit imaginable. And Carl, we were saying this before we started recording, Carl really liked assaulting men specifically.
Yeah. Especially young men.
Especially young men.
Yeah.
So just fair warning, because he just was a big old rapist with men were the apple of his eye.
Yeah, he was an angry man.
He was very angry about it, especially towards other men. It's like you look at a lot of his victims, usually serial killers will target women.
Yeah.
Carl was only going straight for the men.
Yeah, no, that's all he wanted.
That's all he wanted.
And I definitely agree with you that Carl, he was one of the most overlooked serial killers. I think there's two main reasons for this. So first, his crimes, they happened in like the early 20th century when, the media landscape it was completely different from what we have now. And there just wasn't the same level of mass coverage or sensationalism for these cases like there is now. Secondly, though, even though he wrote a book about his life, as you mentioned, he wasn't exactly a writer. So it wasn't until about 40 years after his death that someone took his manuscript and then turned it into something publishable.
Right.
And then at that point, it was like the 1970s, and other big names like Charles Manson, Ed Gein, they'd already, taken over the spotlight. So his story kind of got a little bit overshadowed.
Right.
Which is a shame, because it is a crazy ass story.
Yeah, he was almost born too early to go to the stars or whatever. You know that saying?
No.
That's kind of, you ever hear that saying, born too late to explore the earth, born too early to explore
I've never heard
outer
that.
space?
It sounds nice. I've never heard
Yeah,
that.
well, that's
Okay.
what Carl Panzram is like. In the world of serial killers, he's born a little bit too early to be probably the most famous serial killer of all time, which he kind of should be. But there you go. With that, folks, let's get into the life and crimes of one Charles Chuck Panzram. Let's give it a go. So Charles Panzram, better known to those around him as Carl, when he wasn't using one of his many pseudonyms anyway, was born in the rural list of rural Minnesota, between East Grand Forks and Warren on June 28, 1891. Carl was the sixth of 7 children born to Johann, or John, and Matilda Panzram, who were first-generation Prussian immigrant farmers. To say that Charles' childhood was hell would be a mighty big understatement. In reality, he didn't have a childhood, just a non-stop grind of schooling and working. As soon as he was able to hold a shovel every free moment he had, Carl was put to work on the family farm. It was full-on, back-breaking manual labor that would have broken most adult men. Hard times make hard people. And the only reason Carl survived was by becoming calloused to hard toil and daily brutal punishments. Matilda, Carl's mother, was especially vicious towards him. The slightest infraction would be met with the most violent punishment. Every hour Carl wasn't in school, he was labouring on the family farm. It was only due to the introduction of truancy laws, making it a crime for children not to attend school, that Carl didn't spend every waking hour on the farm. That left little time, maybe 2 to 3 hours for sleep, and absolutely zero time for leisure. As soon as Carl's siblings were old enough to leave the farm, guess what? They did! That left Carl and his sister to take care of the majority of jobs on the farm. Eventually 4 of Carl's 5 brothers had left, the 5th died later in a tragic drowning accident.
Yeah, his parents, they came to America chasing that, the American dream, hoping to strike it big on the frontier.
Sure.
But when they got here, they realised that all the opportunities that they'd hoped for, they were gone. They'd all dried up.
Born too late to explore America.
Yeah.
Bringing it back.
Too late to go to the stars. And
to go to Minnesota. Born too late.
So, life turned into one setback after another, and it just made him more and more bitter. And by the time Carl was born, he had an alcoholic dad and a mom who just had mentally checked out, and they were barely scraping by. One of, the oldest questions within criminology is whether, criminals are born or if they're made. Product by nature or nurture. Honestly, I think as we get into this more, it's pretty clear-cut case that he was a byproduct of the environment that he grew up in.
Yeah.
He was just let down time and time again by people who were meant to protect him as a young lad. It's not an excuse what he did, but he definitely drew the short straw in life.
Sure, for sure. And Carl's criminal career began early. Carl himself claimed that he had already lied and stole as a matter of habit by the time he was only 5 years old. He didn't waste any time. He also admitted that as he got older, bigger, and stronger, the meaner and more aggressive he got too. It didn't help that his behaviour isolated him from other children, and the loneliness only reinforced Carl's dislike of other people. Carl's already appalling state of living only grew worse when his father abandoned the family when Carl was only 7 years old. The next year, 1899, Carl's long history of run-ins with the law began with an appearance in juvenile court. And I'm not joking here, by the way, but Carl's first appearance in court, aged 8 years old, was for being drunk and disorderly in public. Seriously, wow, 8 years old. What kind of mischief would an 8-year-old drunk-ass kid get up to?
What a legend.
I know, he's fucking cool. His second arrest a few years later, in 1903, was similar, when 11-year-old Carl was thrown in jail for public drunkenness. 1903 turned out to be a busy year for young Carl, as shortly after being released from jail, he committed a burglary at a neighbour's house, making off with cake, apples, and, most importantly, a revolver.
Ooh, the old buns and guns heist.
Hey, that's nice. That sounds awesome. This is all my favourite things, cake and guns. Stealing pistols would become a bit of a defining habit in Carl's life. By October of that same year, both Carl's mother and the courts had had enough of her son's unruly disobedience and decided to send him to a reform school, Minnesota State Training School. This school, located in Red Wing on the Mississippi, was home to, at any one time, to as many as 300 boys. I say boys, by the way, but the ages of the inmates ranged from 10 to 20, and there's a big difference between a 10-year-old boy and a 20-year-old grown-ass man.
Bob Dylan actually wrote a song about this reform school. It's called The Walls of the Red Wing.
Well, really?
Yeah, from the
How many boys must I have sex with?
Pretty much, yeah. From the lyrics, it doesn't sound like a nice place to be.
Yeah, no, this is like hell. Hell on earth. It's crazy. According to Carl's autobiographical account, the school was a case of out of the frying pan and into the furnace. There was absolutely no external oversight, so the jailers were left to do anything they liked, and they did. During his short time there, Carl claimed that regular beatings to the point of torture was just a matter of course. Rape was also commonplace. There's a lot of that in the story, unfortunately, folks. Like, especially man-on-man style. Yeah. Carl's time at the school also embedded a deep hatred of anything to do with religion in him. He saw religion as being behind the cruel treatment at the school. Every day he spent at the school, Carl grew to hate other humans more and more. His stories about one workshop in particular, which was nicknamed the Paint Shop, are especially horrific. It earned its name from the boys because everyone who entered the workshop left bruised and bleeding, or painted. The Paint Shop beatings were feared by even the toughest boys at the school. On July 7th, 1905, one of the school's store buildings, housing the school's winter clothes and blankets, mysteriously burned down, and Carl then returned to the family farm. This was actually an act of arson by Carl that went undiscovered and unpunished. At the time, Carl left other boys to shoulder the blame, his guilt only revealed long after the fact, when he admitted to the crime in his autobiography. But the arson was far from the worst crime he would admit to.
So the paint shop that Carl frequented, that was actually the building that he burned down.
Mm-hmm.
So he set it on fire as a way of, punishing those that had punished him.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the only way that he got his way back on people that had abused him. So in his autobiography, he admitted that while working in the officers' dining room, he would often piss in their soup or coffee or tea before serving them. And he also claimed to masturbate into their ice cream or desserts.
Wow.
And then he'd just stand by nearby and watch. He did
That's less cool, the second one, but...
Yeah, right. Yeah, the first was kind of funny.
The first one was... Yeah. I mean, pissing in it, but, come on.
Yeah, piss in your soup. But he also did try to add rat poison to an officer's rice pudding, but he was caught for it and he was severely beaten.
Okay.
But what did the officers expect? They're torturing these young boys and then be like, go handle my food.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure you won't tamper with it. So you're not going to stick your dick in my fucking cake. Right. This is crazy. Yeah. Carl wasn't home for long before his mother discovered he had been helping himself to her bank pocketbook funds and petitioned a judge to send her son to another correctional school. He was sent back to the Red Wing Training School for a short time, but was paroled in January 1906, aged 14, for his rapid progress in the school department and displaying excellent behaviour. Carl later wrote about what he really learned at the school, saying, quote, "I was reformed all right. I had been taught by Christians how to be a hypocrite, and I had learned more about stealing, lying, hating, burning, and killing. And, this is especially grim, I had learned that a boy's penis could be used for something besides to urinate with, and that a rectum could be used for other purposes." What are they, Carl?
Fucking hell.
Yeah, this is so dark. Jeez Louise.
So that second quote was definitely horrifying, but I found another quote from about how he got paroled, which I enjoyed. So he said, "I found out how to use religion as a cloak of hypocrisy to cover up my many rascalities."
That's pretty funny. I like that.
I just love the idea of him trying to poison someone and burning down the building, and it's running off. Nah, I'm such a rascal.
You little rascal. My rascalities. Yeah. Carl spent more of his youth at the training school than he did his own home. By now, freed from the strict conditions of the training school, aged 14, Carl immediately proved his pathological inability to conform to living in civil society by threatening to kill a teacher with a stolen revolver.
He hadn't actually just threatened to kill the teacher. He actually attempted to kill him.
Oh, wow.
So he pointed a gun at his head and he pulled the trigger 3 times, but it never went off. But like the saddest part of this is like he attempted to kill the teacher in a sort of act of self-defense because the teacher, he was beating him as well. After he attempted to murder his abuser, he actually told his family when he went home, and he thought that, you know, they'd be proud of him for standing up for himself. But that obviously wasn't the case, and they beat the shit out of him. So
Damn, literally everybody beat the shit out of
yeah, pretty
Carl.
much.
Yeah. So rather than return home to daily toil under his cruel mother's watch, Carl ran away and he slept rough. He survived on what he could steal and soon began living almost a hobo life, jumping train boxcars to travel the country. It was during this time that Carl was subjected to a final act of humiliation and barbarity that was so irredeemably evil there was no coming back. And this is bad, folks, is like warning. While moving between train cars, Carl came across a group of burly homeless travelers whom he offered to show the warm and empty boxcar from which he'd just left. When the men got Carl alone in the car, they raped and beat him multiple times. Carl was still only a teenager. Given the horrible and unforgivable things he would go on to do, there is no excuse for Carl's behavior, but it's really not difficult to see why he turned out the way that he did. And so, from then on, Carl took to committing the exact same acts he'd been the victim of, including raping homeless men and drifters. At this point, with Carl in his mid-teens, he was already a brutal and brutalized figure. He was also an experienced criminal, a brazen thief who lied as often as he breathed, but after the experience on the trains, Carl became determined to pay it forward. His anger at the uncaring world around him had poisoned his soul.
Yeah, like whatever innocence he had left him that day.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the trains with the intention of going west to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
Which, like, that's such like a boy fantasy, you know?
Right.
And he got like a Stark, like, no.
Yeah.
But like Carl himself, he said that this incident was one that he never forget and had a direct bearing on a lot of his actions later in life.
Yeah, you can understand why. That's like utterly, horrifying. So from that day forward, Carl's entire life was nothing more than a one-way rampage to the grave. That summer, Carl was arrested for a burglary in Butte, Montana, which landed him a 1-year sentence at the Miles City Reform School. While he was at the prison, Carl described one guard in particular as having it out for him. In response, Carl bashed the guard upside the head with a wooden board. Carl had fully intended to murder him, but the man survived. He was, however, badly injured, and he didn't bother Carl again, but others did. He didn't come close to serving the sentence, though, as he escaped, along with a fellow inmate named James Jimmy Benson. The two briefly traveled together. During that time, Carl taught Benson about his hatred of religion, even taking him along robbing and torching several churches. Carl added regular arsons to his long list of criminal credentials. With hundreds in stolen cash and 2 pistols each, the men finally went their separate ways in Fargo, North Dakota, after having burgled, robbed, and assaulted dozens of victims between them. Deep into the year 1906, or maybe early 1907, Carl traveled to St. Helens, Montana, having adopted the name Jefferson Baldwin, where, in line with time-honored criminal tradition, he got pissed and enlisted in the US Army. He served as an infantryman with A Company.
It's like the worst hangover ever.
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck? You get shanghaied into the military. Almost as soon as Carl moved into the barracks, he was sent straight to the guardhouse for stealing $80 worth of government property from his quartermaster's house. Along with his repeated insubordination, the theft would land Carl in the guardhouse for several months before he was eventually court-martialed at Fort William Henry Harrison and slammed with a 3-year sentence, of which he served the majority at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Now, naturally, the army higher-ups had kind of guessed that Carl might not be the right fit for the life of the soldier, and so he was discharged on his release in 1910. It was through Carl's run-in with the army, though, that he found his nemesis of sorts. The man who had officially confirmed Carl's sentence at Fort Leavenworth was none other than US Secretary of War William Howard Taft.
The big man himself.
For some reason, Carl made a note of Taft's name and promised himself if the opportunity arose for revenge, he would take it. That reason may have been the brutal treatment by guards at Leavenworth. Carl later admitted that while he went into Leavenworth already being a rotten egg, by the time he was released, he had become rage personified, having had any last remaining bit of goodness crushed out of him. The years of hard labour at Leavenworth, on top of the daily farm toil of his youth, gave Karl Panzram some serious physical strength. Enough so that Karl found he could easily overpower most adult men who would have the misfortune of crossing his path, and he would basically do what he wanted with them. During his time at Leavenworth, Karl was given a heavy hammer to break rocks and was constantly fixed to a 50-pound ball and chain. That heavyweight combination soon made Karl as strong as he was mean. I love this. Let's make criminals, murderers, and rapists even stronger. Let's give them weights and
what could go wrong?
Them turn them into the Hulk. This can only end well.
He did say that all the hard work and punishment made him quit his habit of masturbating. So I guess everyone's desserts were safe again.
Wow, well that's good to know.
Yeah.
Like, he's also blue-balled. He's gonna be even angrier.
But we can enjoy ice cream again.
Yeah, that's good to know. Ice cream is safe around him. But you're not safe around him. Well, Karl just got worse, basically, is the point here. Having entered Leavenworth aged just 16, by the time he left, Karl was well over 6 foot and close to 200 pounds of pure muscle and sinew. Later, in 1910, after having escaped another chain gang in Rusk, Texas, Karl, now aged 19, briefly traveled to Juarez, Mexico, where he tried to enlist as a federale. The gambit didn't work out though, and Karl was soon on his way back to Texas. That's the funny thing about Karl's story. It's a life of adventure. Like, we're always starting out, and he goes to so many places, there's so many different things. It would be a great story if he wasn't a horrible, killer.
Honestly, like, minus all the raping and killing,
It's pretty epic.
It is pretty good. Yeah. He's all over the place.
He is, yeah. What will he do next? He landed first in Del Rio before he traveled to a small town close to El Paso, but he would later not be able to remember the name of the town. What he could remember, though, was what he did there, the highlight being kidnapping and assaulting a man just outside the town. He finished the man off by strangling him and robbing him of $35 cash.
He tied the man up after robbing him, and he planned on leaving him there. But after walking a little ways away, he started second guessing his rope work. He's like, I don't think I tied that knot quite tight enough. So he figured that he better go back and make sure that the knots, they were tight enough. But when he got back, he found the man, he had almost completely freed himself. So Karl,
he was right to double check that.
He was right? Yeah, like, you should get second guess yourself. But he retied him up properly then. And then, unfortunately for the man, Karl, he decided that while he had him securely bound, he'd take the opportunity then to rape him and then finish off the job.
So he didn't even need to tie him up at all? Man, this is... Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say to that. As was becoming a matter of daily life for Karl, as soon as his boots hit the street, he continued to steal anything he could get a hold of. And this time it was only a matter of a few weeks before he was arrested again. This time for vagrancy, after he was caught riding trains in possession of 2 pistols. Theft was one of the very least of the crimes he committed that Karl could have been imprisoned for. He'd already committed countless assaults and rapes, and murders too. For the vagrancy arrest, Karl managed to give a false name of Jeff Davis. Using the false identity in Jacksonville, Texas, he was sent to the Country Road Gang, but was able to escape after only 65 days served in early 1911. So he's like this horrible person, and he's also a master escape artist as well.
Right,
He keeps on escaping from, I think he escapes from like almost a dozen prisons.
Yeah, it's crazy how I don't know, but like, were the prisons just that easy to get out of back in the day?
I know. Given that he was convicted under the fake name, Karl should have discarded the identity of Jeff Davis, but for some reason he continued to use it for a little while longer. After moving north, Karl was arrested under the same name, Jeff Davis, in Fresno, California, on a petty theft charge for stealing a bicycle and was sentenced to 3 months in jail, but managed to, once again, do a legger after serving less than a third of the time. It was at this time that Karl would later claim to have committed one of the most heinous acts of his life, and that truly is saying something. While riding trains, Karl had isolated a homeless man whom he was in the process of assaulting when he was interrupted by a train security guard, technically called a brakeman, who he then forced the homeless man to assault in turn. All of this was done at gunpoint, but the 2 victims were eventually let go with their lives. Many others wouldn't be so lucky. And folks, the story of Karl Panzram, it's like in and out of prisons. To list all of the crimes, we would be here for quite literally hours. So to cut a long story short and not bore you with, he went to this town, he robbed this, he killed this, he did this. The cycle of arrest and arrest and arrest goes on and on and on under a multitude of false names, ending in sentence, escape, and that pretty much sums up the next decade of Karl Panzram's life. Carl ran up arrests across so many states, from coast to coast, serving sentences in Fresno, California, Rusk, Texas, Dallas, Oregon, Harrison, Idaho, Butte, Montana, Montana State Prison, Oregon State Penitentiary, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Sing Sing, New York, Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. He was in Washington, D.C., Leavenworth, Kansas. For as many jails and prisons he visited, Carl had as many, if not more, aliases that he used.
He was run out of jails in America.
The majority of his arrests were for small-time burglaries, and resulted in relatively short sentences, 1 to 2 years at most. Not that he often stuck around to see the sentence out regardless. Whether behind bars or no, Carl's behaviour barely changed. He did what he wanted, and he defied anyone to try and stop him.
Like, he got away with a lot of horrific crimes. He was a pretty terrible burglar.
Yeah, he does keep getting caught for the burglary. He doesn't get caught for the murders.
I know, yeah.
But he does get caught for the burglaries.
Like, it seems like every single time as well.
Yeah, I think it's literally just a case, though, if he just did it, he didn't even give a shit, and he was like, try and stop me.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Another notable arrest came in 1913 under the name Jack Allen when Carl was laying low in an Oregon whorehouse, or bordello, to put it politely. But they would have called it a hua house back in the day, so we'll use their terminology. Carl woke up one morning to find out he had been robbed of his wallet and pistol. To top off his bad luck, Carl later found out he had contracted gonorrhea, which is like, oh my god, it's like that's what he, with all the shit he does, it's like, oh no, I got an STI. He thought was likely to have caused his extreme paranoia and increase in the violence he would later then go on to commit. Soon after that, Carl was back in prison on charges of highway robbery, sodomy, and assault. At that point, they might as well have installed a revolving door at the prison for him to come and go as he pleased. After quickly escaping the Oregon State Penitentiary, Carl was picked up again in Idaho and returned to county jail. He escaped again, but was picked up in Montana after a burglary and sent back to his old stomping ground at the Montana State Penitentiary.
I don't think gonorrhea would make someone violent. I thought that was like syphilis.
I'm not sure. That's what he blamed it on that, but I actually don't know if it mentally affects you. I have no idea.
Yeah, I haven't got a clue. But he did also say, he also used gonorrhea as an excuse to stop sleeping with women. So
he's like, well, now I have to sleep with men. That was literally why he went around assaulting men.
Kinda, yeah. So this is a quote from him. He said, I had a first case class of gonorrhea. I began to suspect that the ladies were probably best to be left alone. I have followed that policy pretty closely ever since. Once in a while, since then, they would get their claws into me, but not while I was sober or in the daytime, where I could see them first. So,
like he pictures women doing to him what he does to men.
I know, yeah. It's like, just to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to stay clear of the women, but
wow. Well, the women...
Sodomy's fine with men.
For the women, anyway. Yeah. Damn. So, not only did he give a false name under this arrest, but he even lied about his age on prison records. Under occupation, Carl put down, quite seriously, thief, which was accurate at least. Even by the standards of the day, life in the Montana State Penitentiary, up in Deer Lodge, was not great. That was thanks largely to the prison warden, Harry Minto. Harry Minto believed in relentless punishment. Prolonged periods of isolation and almost daily beatings were commonplace and encouraged within the prison's walls. Carl had done enough time around the country to have heard plenty of stories about what went on there, and it left him with an urge to get out as soon as he got the chance. As it happened, it was a little over a year, most of which was spent in solitary confinement, before the opportunity would present itself. Carl, along with another prisoner named Otto Hooker, managed to flee custody, but during the course of the escape, Harry Minto was killed by Otto Hooker. That made Carl an accomplice to murder. Rather than lying low to evade the law, Carl's wild behaviour grew more and more untamed. After the women got their claws on me.
Damn those women.
Over the next year, he was involved in 2 separate shootouts with various lawmen. The first was between Carl and an officer unlucky enough to recognise Carl as Jeff Davis from a wanted poster. The 2 men traded shots until Carl's stolen .38 was empty. The second gun battle of the day for Carl was when he attempted to murder Chief Deputy Sheriff Joseph Frum with the officer's own gun while being driven to jail. That bid for freedom ended with several bullet holes in the roof of the police cruiser and Carl being beaten bloody and unconscious. After less than a full year on the lam in 1918, the police finally caught up with Carl and returned him to the Oregon State Penitentiary. Miraculously, the very same year, on May 12th, 1918, Carl managed to, if you can believe it folks, get hold of a hacksaw blade, which he used to cut through the window bars and escape the prison once again.
Where did he get these hacksaws from?
I don't know. Carl fled to Northwest, leaving a trail of burnt churches and burgled homes in his wake.
You know, like, I'm not surprised Carl's eagerness to escape Oregon State Penitentiary, though.
Yeah.
So, the physical and psychological punishments that prisoners endured there was something else. So, more than 400 prisoners were crammed into 3 weather-beaten and damp cell houses.
Yeah.
They were only allowed to send 1 letter per month, and they were all censored, and any complaints about their conditions of the prison, they were punished. They also enforced a strict code of silence, so any prisoner who was caught talking or even appeared to be talking would get a beating from the guards, who they all possessed these steel-tipped canes.
Oh.
There was one guard called Jim Vinegar Cooper, who was he was a deeply religious man, but he was also known by a different name to the prisoners, Man of Flogs. So Cooper, his favourite way to break someone that got out of line was to hoist them up onto a pillar and then lash them with a cat o' nine tails.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Damn. Carl had already committed more crimes than he could recall, and he hadn't even entered his serious killing years yet. Yeah, folks, we're still in this is the prologue of the story, if you can believe that. He hasn't even gotten started to like the
Act 1.
Yeah, we're still in Act 1. Traveling under the name John O'Leary. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus, man.
This is John O'Leary.
Okay,
oh,
now.
Jesus. Nobody ever suspects the Irish. Get away with anything. Carl decided to take his activities international. After finding his way to New York, he was able to charm and con his way into a seaman's identification card. That allowed Carl to get himself a place working on the SS James S. Whitney, which was soon heading to Panama. Now he's going international, folks. Almost on arrival, Carl partnered up with another sailor to try and steal themselves a small boat. According to Carl's account, though, the theft went drastically wrong, and his partner in crime ended up killing the sailors on board the vessel. The sailor thief turned killer was soon grabbed by the law, but Carl managed to evade capture. He eventually worked his way over to Peru, where he picked up legitimate work in a copper mine. Over the next couple of years, Carl racked up some serious nautical miles, traveling around South America before a brief return to the States. After a fleeting visit to Texas, Carl departed on a whistle-stop tour of Europe. Carl's going abroad, folks. This is like Sex in the City.
Euro trip.
Yeah, Euro trip. During which he took in the capitals of England, Scotland, and France, plus a quick look at some lovely buildings in Germany's second city, Hamburg. Those 2 years of travel were the longest period of uninterrupted freedom in Carl's adult life. But that doesn't mean they were free of crime. Carl learned early on, through his hobo days, that the best thing a criminal could do was keep on moving. Like a shark or an 80s truck driver, Carl killed, and he moved on.
I like how he kind of took like a break from his career as a hardened criminal in the US.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, I'm done with that life. It's time for, Carl needs some me time,
yeah,
you know?
I'm going to go backpacking around Europe, taking the sights and maybe, just maybe, find myself.
Exactly, yeah.
But turned out what he was searching for was back in the US all along.
You gotta come home to find yourself.
Yeah. Angry murder.
Yeah.
But also, while he was in Hamburg, he'd ran out of money. So he sailed back to the States. He landed in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He robbed a jewelry store of about like $7,000, which is
a lot of money back then.
He signed up to a ship, sailed back to Hamburg again, blew all his money in just 9 days.
Wow.
And then once again he was broke, so then he sailed back to the States on the same ship that he arrived on.
Nicely done, but wouldn't it back then have like taken a couple of weeks or whatever to travel from Europe to America?
Yeah, it would have been a few weeks. I
don't exactly know, but like
it
would have been a while. It almost would have probably been longer than the 9 days it took him to spend the money in Hamburg.
Yeah, I don't know.
Folks,
let us know.
Let us know. Shout
out
your radio or your stereo speaker right now, telling us how long do you think it would take to sail from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Hamburg, Germany in the year about 1920.
Well, the Titanic set sail in 1912, so I mean,
like, it only got halfway.
That's true. Yeah.
But like, it's interesting. We're still waiting for the Titanic.
I just mean they'd good ships.
By those methods, it takes over 100 years to cross the.
I just meant they'd good ships.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, that wasn't a good ship.
Yeah, that was a terrible ship.
Never mind.
It's famously a terrible ship. Once he returned to the eastern coast of the United States, Carl would often roam the streets looking for a house to rob or a young boy to victimize. Now, remember I said Carl chose himself a nemesis, his arch enemy. Well, in 1920, Carl targeted a mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. The mansion belonged to one William Howard Taft, who, by that point, was a former US president. He made off with a lot of valuables, including Taft's wife's jewelry and tens of thousands of dollars worth of bonds. I mean, you can only imagine if Taft had been there, what Panzram would have done. And Panzram was probably hoping he was going to be there.
I don't think it would take him down. He was I think still is the fattest president in America.
Really?
Yeah,
Big boy.
He was like 340 pounds or something.
Chunky fella?
He was big.
Wow.
When he was in the White House, they had to like custom make him a bath so he wouldn't get stuck in it.
That's awesome. For Carl, though, the most important part of the mansion's score had nothing to do with the large dollar amount, but the personal slight he scored against his nemesis. To further the point, Carl was particularly happy with stealing Taft's own personal pistol, a .45 Colt 1911. Carl intended to put a big shiny bow on the insult to Taft by using the president's own handgun to kill as many people as he possibly could. Carl's vendetta against Taft was solely based on Taft being the man to confirm his military detention at Leavenworth back in Kansas. The burglary preceded Carl's transition to his final form. We're basically in the Charizard section of Carl Panzram's life.
Okay.
Now it was Carl let loose. With the proceeds of the robbery, Carl legally purchased a small sailing yacht, the Akista. After sailing the yacht down to New York from Rhode Island, Carl found himself a new racket. He would take advantage of the vulnerable state sailors were prone to drink themselves into. He first lured them onto his yacht with promises of either work or alcohol before raping them at the business end of Taft's 1911. He took joy in executing his victims with the same stolen weapon and dumping their bodies into the water near the famous guiding lighthouse at Execution Rocks Light, Long Island Sound. Carl later claimed to have killed at least 10 men over a 3-week period using this MO. He likely would have continued on the sailor killing spree had the yacht not run into rocks while Carl was in the process of assaulting 2 men. The damage in the collision was significant enough for the yacht to sink somewhere off the Atlantic City coastline. It also allowed his 2 captives enough time to flee with their lives.
There were so many sailors going missing over this 3-week period that Panzram said that he had to start keeping them alive for a few days just to do, some actual work to avoid suspicion.
No, really?
But I'd say that must have been like a weird couple of days to keep these lads busy when there probably wasn't like any real work on the ship.
Yeah.
Because he was still off robbing other boats as well. So his boat was filled with just wallets and clothes of the people that he'd already killed.
Damn.
It would have been weird.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah.
Like hell. This guy is like literally like a demon from hell.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could describe Carl Panzram. The closest thing a human we come to. After a busy start to the decade, Carl had no intention of letting up. He was arrested and jailed in Bridgeport, Connecticut on a burglary charge, during which he was in possession of a loaded handgun. After serving 6 months, Carl hooked up with a maritime union who were engaged in a strike and were constantly involved in violent clashes with strike breakers. Carl got himself arrested after one of those run-ins escalated into a street-to-street gun battle with police. Somehow he was granted bail, which, no shit, he immediately jumped before managing to successfully stow away on a ship bound for Angola. Soon after arriving in Angola, in West Africa, which was still, at the time, under the control of the Portuguese, Carl managed to land himself a gig with the Sinclair Oil Company as a foreman on an oil rig. For many, it would have been the perfect chance to go straight. But there was no chance of that for our man Carl. And that, folks, is where we'll pick up next week with part 2 of Carl Panzram, who I think literally might be the scariest son of a bitch to have ever lived. What is up there?
We're only halfway there.
I know, yeah.
It's
there's
crazy.
Still a whole load of more shit to get through, and it doesn't get any better.
No.
Yeah, so look forward to that, folks.
Yeah.
Look forward to that next week.
Yeah, see you then.
All right. Yeah. Sleep well. All right, folks. Thanks so much for listening. As you guys know, new That Chapters are out the podcasts are out every Monday morning. Videos out on Tuesdays, so please give us a go. Rate, like, and subscribe. I don't know. You know the drill. Thanks for listening, folks. And listener stories will be coming soon, so please, we actually recorded a couple.
They were a lot of fun. Keep sending them in, they're so good.
Yeah, keep sending your listener stories in, so we'll have new episodes of listener stories out. And until we talk to you, take care of each other and yourselves.
And I'll see you.
All right, thanks guys. or bordello, to put it politely. But they would have called it a hua house back in the day, so we'll use their terminology. She was a hua. Sorry, I've been watching The Sopranos a lot lately.
All right, kiddies, that's enough for tonight.